Welcome back, baseball fans, to a special baseball broadcast. This is not in the carryover format of the leagues. This is a special 1930 WAR5 draft project that I'm working on. Kind of wanted to show you what I've been up to in this other project. I've got the set of 1930, and I'll bring up the league here, as a matter of fact, from Baseball Reference. The famous 1930 league was reissued by Strat-O-Matic in the early 1980s, so it has the same format that I use, that the cards resemble the cards that were printed between 1977 and 1984. The white cards with just E-rating on the back, printed somewhere between 1980 and 83. And they did reissues of a bunch of old-timer teams, including the 1930 set. And so I acquired a set, and this is what that season actually looked like, where the Philadelphia Athletics and Connie Mack, their little heyday, the 3 years of 1929, 30, and 31, and the rest of their history was pretty bad. But anyway, they won the World Series and also win 102 games, beating the St. Louis Cardinals. And also what's interesting about this is it's a little bit upside down, because you see the Washington Nationals are also good here. So Philadelphia Athletics and the Nationals are actually good for once. And here's the Yankees, Indians, Tigers, and the teams you'd expect are there. And in the National League, it's Cubs cards at the top. The Dodgers weren't the Dodgers. They started as the Dodgers, renamed themselves the Robins, and then in 1932 went back to calling themselves the Dodgers again. But you see the Cubs and cards are at the top. But if you look at the top four teams are really close together in the pennant. And really the Reds and the Phillies, can you imagine in Philadelphia where the one team wins the World Series, the other team loses the most games, the other team wins the most games? I wonder how often that sort of scenario takes place. Maybe in 62 when the Mets did what they did and the Yankees did what they did, maybe. But in any event, this season is mostly noted for the ridiculous hitting, the ridiculous offense. Let's just go through the teams. Look at the runs per game. The league average 5.68 runs per game in the National League. The league batting average, this is not a misprint, 303 league batting average. Compared to where the sport is today, that is absolutely nuts. And then I guess I practically should look at the... it's really not worth looking at pitching. There's a handful of decent pitchers, of course, in any season. But we just got to look at the hitters here. So... You got to scroll down to the sixth best hitter to find Hack Wilson, who was the MVP. Poor Hack, he's way down here. 56 homers, 191 RBIs, 105 walks, a 723 slugging, 1177 OPS. Did get the MVP, and yet they have plate appearances. This is sort of a plate appearances. We have Bill Terry hitting 401 here, right? And we also have some 386. We can do a sort by OPS here. Babe Herman of the Brooklyn Dodgers hits 393 with 35 bombs. Chuck Klein of the Phillies, 386, 40 bombs. Bill Terry. Poor Bill Terry only had 23 home runs and 129 RBIs. Gosh, he sounds a lot like Don Mattingly on 401 hitting version of Don Mattingly there. And then Wally Berger, 38 home runs. Let's go to the American League. I believe some guy named Lou Gehrig has the best overall WAR in this. Let's do a sort by WAR then. Just to, Ruth got him. So Babe Ruth, 10.3 WAR. with a 359 average, 493 on base, 732 slugging, 1225 OPS. Joe Cronin gets the MVP, mostly because Washington was in second behind Philadelphia, and Cronin played a difficult defensive position, hit 346. But my goodness, Ruth and Gehrig. I mean, come on. I mean, there's 11 and 1200. Al Simmons of the world champion Philadelphia Athletics does not get the MVP. He probably should have gotten it. 381 with 36. I mean, it's just, I mean, the numbers are just eye-popping. It's like a slow-pitch softball league, really. And so, anyway, I got this card set. And so my project is to draft a league that's based on WAR. And in an easier way of looking at it is looking at it as WAR multiplying the WAR number times 5 to get a WAR number that's that kind of resembles a dollar amount number, is what I was trying to get it to look like by bumping it up to simply multiplying the number by 5. For instance, I did this in the 1956 set. So here, this is briefly, this is the 1956 set. If you take the WAR amounts for each player and you multiply them by 5, and that number then turns into a dollar amount. So therefore, all WAR numbers multiplied by 5 are going to end in 0 or 50 cents. So it's going to be an even number or 50 cents at the end. Mickey Mantle is in a league of his own in 1956. He's actually worth 56 bucks. The next player early win is 39, Duke Snyder 38, Willie Mays 38, and it goes down from there. 36 is 33, 32, 31, 29, 28, and they get bigger and bigger until you go all the way down. You get negative WARs. So you actually get negative WAR players. Poor Connie Grobe, the worst player in that set, is worth negative $11.50. That's like a coupon. You know, that's like a discount right there. So in theory, what you do is if you were drafting a team with WAR, you'd get Connie Grobe here and Mickey Mantle to play on the same team because he can eat away some of the excess value that Mantle's card has. For instance, you take $11.50 from 56 and you're down to 45 bucks, and he's closer to these other guys. So that was the thinking, that you'd put the superstars with some low quality players to reduce their WAR numbers, and redraft the league with a dollar amount, which kind of reminds me of rotisserie baseball back in the early 80s, late 70s. This is where you did it was fantasy baseball, but you used a dollar amount. And I can remember in 1984, I did this with some friends. And in that, it was $260, and it was 23 players that you drafted. So the relative average is about $11.30 per player. Okay, but what happens is, in that particular draft, yours truly, the bidding got out of control for a specific player. The player was Dale Murphy. I don't know if you remember Dale Murphy used to play for the Atlanta Braves. He was an MVP in '82. And I kind of really was a big Dale Murphy fan at the time, so I spent $54.50 on Dale Murphy. And yeah, I went way over, for that one guy. And he took up, as you can see, 20% of my cap of my the bidding there. So that meant I had $205.50 left to take 22 players. And that meant I was down to just $9.34 per player the rest of the way instead of the $11. So that was an expensive lesson that I learned way back then. So let's get back to the raw stats here. This is the 1930 set again. We have it sorted right now. This is the American League hitters on this sheet. So it begins alphabetically with the Boston, the White Sox, Cleveland. It's alphabetical. Detroit, okay? And then the next row, the rows are sorted by batting average. And there's also a code here in column A. For the leading hitter of the team, the code is an 01. So Boston is team 101. So player 101 is Earl Webb, who hits .323. And if you look at the actual Strat-O-Matic cards, the templates they use match and are sorted by batting average 100% of the time. That's sort of something that Strat-O-Matic was known for. And they didn't make any mistakes, I guess, or just changed the rules. They did it exactly that way. So if you sort by batting average or sort by Strat-O-Matic template, you'll get the same result. So you're going to have 1 to 12 or 1 to 13 hitters, and you're going to have 1, 2, or 3 extra players. The extra players I denoted with begin at 121. So it's 121, 122, 123 for 3 of Boston's extra players. Notice that when you get to the lowest batting averages on the team, look how low the WARs get. The red parentheses is negative, so it's minus 2.5 for that guy, minus 3.5, minus 2, minus 1. You get the idea. So these are all the hitters plus the extra players from that card set from 1930. And looking at this column next to the team name, this is the actual WAR, which factors in everything, total WAR, not just the batting average stats. And this column is WAR5. So you see Earl Webb is 3.2 WAR. You multiply that by 5, you get 16 exactly. So again, the WAR5 number in the yellow column here, it's going to be 0 or 0.5. It's like an even dollar amount or 50 cents. So bring some quarters to the draft, right? So the hitters are sorted here, going all the way down. And we can just look at the highlights in the WAR5 column of outrageous performance. Carl Reynolds of the White Sox, $31.50 because he hit .359, .973. 22 homers, 104 RBI for Carl Reynolds of the White Sox. I'll just try and focus on the over 30 guys. Detroit, Charlie Gehringer, .330, .938 OPS, 16 home runs. And you go down till we get to the Yankees. Oh boy. Lou Gehrig, again, .379, .1194, 43. Now, here's another thing. I adjusted WARs on selected players. Let's get to that now for a moment. When I added the total WAR up, I wanted to get a total WAR that rounded to a number that could be divisible by 32 teams. So I can move all these players into 32 different teams. You have the 16 teams from 1930, and you can have, expansion teams. So to do that, I trimmed excessive WAR off of players. Babe Ruth's was 51.5. I moved him down to 48, then 47. These are some names of Hall of Famers that I adjusted their WARs so that you don't have that top-heavy excess. Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Joe Cronin, Bill Terry, Dazzy Vance, Hack Wilson, Turk Farrell, Lefty Grove, Dick Sorrell, and Burley Grimes. I moved all their wars by between 1 and 3.5 points. And the big thought is that, let's go back to the case of the Yankees for a second. For the Yankees to go out and acquire Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth, okay, that's already $90. So they take up majority of the whole entire war of the Yankee team. So they're going to have a bunch of scrubs. It'll be Gehrig and Ruth and a bunch of scrubs. Once you start moving all these war players around into new places. So I'll get to the 32 in a moment. Let me just keep going through Al Simmons, 39. And then the pitchers, they're not glamorous at all. Here's a guy, a $22 pitcher who's got a 4.21 ERA, Danny McFadden, Milt Gaston. Okay, Wes Farrell is $40 for Cleveland. He's 25-13. He's got a 3.31 ERA. He's got a 1.37 WHIP, and he's $40. Whew. I'd rather have one of those hitters for $40 than have that pitcher with a 1.37 WHIP. 1.37 that's been bad in my leagues in the 1960s, 70s, 80s. Okay. And then you have, let's see, I think Dazzy Vance. Oh, Lefty Grove for the Philadelphia Athletics, the best team in the game. 28-5, a 2.54 ERA, a 1.14 WHIP. So his card is actually the best looking card in this thing. He actually looks like an actual pitcher, not like, you look at these ERAs, folks. I mean, 4s, 5s, and 6s, and 7s, and 8s. And I've never seen so many Strat-O-Matic cards printed with ERAs of 6.28 and 6.35 and 7.80 and 8.29 and 9. I mean, this is just crazy offense in this set. So let me get to the overall war and the strategy of how to draft the league. The American League and National League would have 384 players. Strat-O-Matic printed 383 players. For some reason, I got it. I think I have it here. The 1930. Let's see. Okay, so 1930 roster sheet. It's only 383 players because for some reason they only gave the Yankees 3 guys. B. Hargrave, L. McAvoy, and Y. Westling. They didn't give him a 4th. So just to be consistent with a numbering, I wrote a nameless card in and assigned him to the Yankees. A left-handed pitcher named John Milligan who threw 28 innings for the Philadelphia Athletics. He's got a 3.18 ERA and a $1.66 WHIP. That's a high WHIP for a low ERA. WAR5 of 4. Practically won't even be drafted by the Yankees. But this simply got me to 384. In the American League, there's 121 hitters, 71 pitchers. Added together, that's 192. National League, 114 hitters, 78 pitchers. Basically, 7 more pitchers in the National League, 7 more hitters in the American League. But again, there's no DH or anything like that back in this time. It's just that Strat decided to print more hitters for the American League based on performance, I'm guessing, versus more better pitchers available in the National League. It doesn't matter if, as long as you get to 384, that's the number of cards that are in the league. And as you've been following my channel, I've always had a 32-team league. So it's pretty simply, if you take 384 and 32, you can put together a 12-player team. So you can't play a game with a 12-man roster, but you can draft the talent so that 32 different clubs have 12 men on them. And the purpose of this is to do a carryover in different decades where I pick up 12 cards per team here in this WAR5 league. In the 1956, do the same thing there. And in 1956, there's also 384. So I could get 12 players in 1956 per team. And because it's 26 years apart, obviously, you don't have any overlap. You don't have any duplicate players. They probably passed away between the two. The kids, frankly, some of these guys might be children of the guys who play in 1930 for being 26 years apart. But any event, you could have a 12-man roster in 56. You can have a 12-man roster in 1930. You put them together, you could have a 20, 22, 24-man roster. Plus, I have more 5 draft plans going for the 1961 set, the year Roger Maris hit 61 home runs, and the 1968 set. That was the year that Bob Gibson had that 112 ERA, and the Tigers beat the Cardinals in the World Series. So those are the years: 1930, 1956, 1961, and 1968. There's going to be overlap in the latter ones because the years are closer together. But the point is I wanted to try something I haven't done before, and that is to kind of mix eras of the sport together. Get Babe Ruth and Mickey Mantle, for instance, to be playing on the same team. That sort of thing. But this is like the first step in the process. It's just to start with the 1930 and see how this war draft goes. I haven't done the draft yet. I don't know how it's gonna go. So I want to look at these numbers here and this grand total number. This is the grand total of the WAR5 for National League pitchers. This is for National League hitters. This is for American League pitchers and American League hitters. The grand total is this number. Now, the total used to be a number greater than that, but I wanted a number that was divisible by 32. That number is this one, 2592. You take 2592 divided by 32, and you get 81. $81 to spend on a team. So that's why I had to go into and crop and edit some of the wars, tweak them a little bit, to get a grand total of 2592. Divided by 32 teams means that you can spend $81 on your team. Now, here's the next big leap in the project. This is one that I've been debating. I have 3 classifications of teams here. I have the 16 actual teams in 1930. I have a group of 8 franchises that were added to Major League Baseball that I call Group 8A. Let me show you that here. This is the general draft order from the 1930. Boston had the worst record in the American League, followed by the White Sox, followed by the St. Louis Browns or Baltimore Orioles, the Detroit Tigers, Cleveland. So there's 8 American League teams from 1930. Then there's 8 National League teams from 1930. Then there's the California Angel franchise, which came into existence in 1961, which is the same year that Maris hit the 61 homers. And the Minnesota Twins. They came in 1961. 1962, Houston and the New York Mets came into existence. 1969, it was 4 teams. It was Kansas City Royals, Seattle Pilots or the Milwaukee Brewers, the Expos, and the San Diego Padres. Then in 1977 in the American League, we had Seattle and Toronto. And then after that, these are my fictional expansion teams. The Florida Marlin expansion, the Ohio Player fictional team expansion, and then lastly the 4 Mountain Time Zone expansions. The Arizona Diamondbacks, the Colorado Rockies, actual Major League Baseball franchises, and the fictional Las Vegas franchise, and the fictional Portland franchise. That's how you get to 32. So there's a mixture of Seattle and Toronto begin the last 8 here. And prior to that are the expansion teams from the 1960s, the 4 in 69 and the 4 in 61 or 62. Let's go back to these categories again. Category A are the 1960 expansion ones. Category B is Seattle, Toronto, and my fictional ones. So what I decided to do was, I don't think it's right for the Yankees to only have 81 bucks if they're supposed to have Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth on their team and they exceed 81 bucks. That doesn't make sense. So there's a couple of number manipulations I can do here. One is to increase the WAR spending for the traditional 16 teams from 81 to 96. So you take 16 times 96 and it comes up with this number. To do that, you offset by subtracting from 81, 72 for the 1960 expansion teams, and 60, only 60 bucks for the truly fictional ones. If you do that and apply it to the number of teams involved, you get that same number, $25.92. I could continue to play with these numbers if I wanted to. Let's say I went to $100 for a traditional Major League Baseball. Then I got to come down here and here. That's not even good enough. There you go. That would work. You see how I can pick weights here. I can pick dollar amounts that each franchise can spend. I'm of the opinion that I should really think of spending the most for the actual 1930 franchises so they can actually look somewhat, they can have more of their stars on their teams. I might just leave it like that, 170 and 54. But the other thought was, and this made me think of, I think in the NBA they called it the Bird Clause, the Larry Bird Clause, about the cap rules, and you're allowed an exemption for your highest paid player. And so this is what I thought of. It's a Hall of Fame exemption, 1 per team, and the amount up being 25 bucks. So once a player gets drafted, the WAR values will go into this column, or actually this column. When I copy a player, let's just pretend draft a Boston player to Boston. Let's give him a Earl Webb, okay? Let's copy Earl Webb over here as if we drafted him. Okay. So Earl Webb is $16, and this is the total WAR of Boston at $16. Now let's say I drafted for the Yankees. Let's just do the 2 guys we mentioned, Gehrig and Ruth, right? Let's say I drafted Gehrig and Ruth for the Yankees. I'm just going to copy over here to New York. And the plan is to have the hitters go from top down and pitchers to go from bottom up. All right, so there's Gehrig and Ruth at 43 and 47 with a grand total of 90. So I'm thinking of a $25 exemption if your player is in the Hall of Fame and probably having an MVP kind of year. In the case of these guys, they're both on the MVP list, and of course they're the greatest, some of the greatest players in baseball history. So they certainly qualify for an exemption. So I would apply for that exemption by adding that there, and now the Yankee total that was $90 is now $65 to have these two players. So that's what I'm thinking of doing. And this is, I don't know how this is going to work until I actually get into this process. Do I allow the Yankees 2 exemptions? And do I double up? Do I take that times 2? Now they spent $40 and they got Gehrig and Ruth. Moreover, if they can't afford their players, do we really want to see Babe Ruth or Lou Gehrig or Yogi Berra or Elson Howard or whoever, Mickey Mantle, on another franchise? I mean, there's something about the tradition that I kind of need that makes my carryover league interesting. Is Johnny Bench is a Cincinnati Red, and Willie Mays is a Giant, or etc. Willie Stargell's a Pirate. I kind of want to keep the Hall of Fame guys as close to their proper team as possible, because as at least in 1930, there's so many extra players who hit 300 or better that these expansion teams, they can get those part-time players who hit 300 to at least, be a 300 hitter on a team. But they don't have a Hall of Fame pedigree. But that's what I'm thinking I would do, So the question I guess I have here is, how much exemption do I give? Because let's look at the strategy otherwise. Let's say we didn't do an exemption. Let's say you only had $100 to spend on the New York Yankees, right? All right, here's the New York Yankees. Ruth and Gehrig are $90. Earl Combs, part of that 27 Yankee. I think he was a leadoff hitter on that team. He has 344. You can't have him. I bet Tony Lazzari. You can't have him. 303 hitter with 121 RBI. Bill Dickey, Hall of Fame catcher. 339. You can't have him on the team. Are they even the Yankees anymore? Moreover, you don't want Lou Gehrig to play on the Florida Marlins, do you? Right? So that doesn't make sense either. So there has to be a happy place where the spendy teams can spend more money for the point of making the league look more like Major League Baseball may have looked in 1930. If you decided that you were going to move a lot of its players into different leagues, into different cities. Of course, back in this era, you had 2 teams in Boston, 2 teams in Philadelphia, 2 in Chicago. And there was no teams in the Midwest or West, So that's the kind of the fun part of this war draft, is just to move the players around. I wouldn't play any actual games once the 12 players are in 32 boxes. The point is to build upon it with the other card sets I mentioned, so that I add the 1956, 61, and 68. And eventually I get full rosters, and then I can start a league, kind of like a Hall of Fame league. This is also here the draft strategy of the order of choosing players. The 16 teams would pick 4 players, and then that means that 64 players are kept, and this is a rolling total. Then the 8As, the 69 expansion, take 4. That's 32 for a grand total of 96. Then we go back to the 16 again and take another 4. Then the fictional expansion take 4. Then we go back to the 16 and take 2 more. You see what I'm doing is I'm letting the 16 get as much of, it kind of alternates. The 16 traditional, then the 8, 16, then the 8, 16, then the 8, 16, then the 8, 8, 8. Until all 384 are picked. And they'll all end up in this sheet here. You see it's 12 records. I'll put a hitter here. I'll put a pitcher down there. At a certain point, when they're done, they'll meet. They'll be like, maybe it's 7 hitters and 5 pitchers. Maybe it's 6 and 6. But no rhyme or reason. Doesn't matter. You're going best player available, and just eyeballing up a balanced roster. So if I have a 12 team here, let me kind of show you, where did I put those years on one of these sheets, I thought. Or maybe I did it over here. So if it's the 1930 will have 12 players on it. 1956 will have 12 on it. 1961, because they added 2 more teams, they're going to be 14-man rosters. And 1968 are going to be 15-man rosters. So that means that for all 32 teams, it's 53 players. So, but you're going to have a little bit of overlap here in this. So part of that 53 factors in overlap. So it's probably closer to the upper 40s. So from that population, you can put together a 20 or 24-man roster. But that's another process of how do you select that. What players do you leave out and then continue on and remove and add players. But at least there's enough of a population when you add the multiple years in that you can actually put a baseball team together and actually play games. So step 1 of the process is the 1930 WAR5 draft. And that's one of the next projects I'll be doing, is I'll be doing this draft in the next few days, and I'll do a follow-up video and show you the results. At a certain point, I might actually even think of redoing the draft if I don't like the first, I guess the rough draft, as we like to say, right? The first draft might be a rough draft that might look distorted, and I might not like the results I'm seeing, and then means I might have to tweak the exemption number here. If I get a dozen cards in my hand and they look horrible, let's say we get down to the bottom here. So to the 32nd and 31st team, you know, if they're just awful, I don't want to, you know, I don't like playing games where you've got a Hall of Fame roster that just destroys a AAA team. It's just not fun to play games like that. To see how badly you can beat them, 11-0 or 13-0 or whatever. So I got to make sure that once this is all done, do these fictional teams with players I've never heard of. And again, the names of these guys back in this time, back in this era, there's just some really cool names. There's a lot of Pinkies here. Pinky Higgins and Pinky Whitney. I think there's like 5 of them I counted before here. General Crowder. There's some Lefty O'Doul, Shanty Hogan. There's some just great classic baseball names in this. So I think I'll have a lot of time broadcasting these guys. I don't know. I'll learn along with my listeners here. I'll have to do my research and find out a lot about these guys from a bygone era, as I have no way of knowing, not being alive then, obviously, and of their stories otherwise. But in any event, we'll pause it here. Thanks for tuning into the special WAR5, a little different kind of video. It's a back burner project. I'll be picking this up periodically by bits and bits in the background while I work on other stuff. But thanks for checking this out, and we'll see you next time.